With Deadpool now out, let's talk about the movie featuring the character's first appearance. You know, one of the movies that Days of Future Past wiped from the continuity.
You poor man. I don't want your suffering. I don't want your future!
Once Fox's X-Men trilogy ended, they decided to continue the franchise with a string of standalone origin films for their characters. X-Men Origins Magneto was well into pre-production when X-Men Origins Wolverine was released. And while X-Men Origins Wolverine was a financial success, it was a critical failure. This was enough for Fox to retool X-Men Origins Magneto and turn it into X-Men First Class. X-Men Origins Wolverine was a troubled movie right from the start, having a nearly completed work print leaked online before the movie was officially released. Fox estimated that the film was downloaded 15 million times before the movie came into theaters. Still, the movie served as further proof that illegal downloading holds little to no effect on box office numbers, as the film made 2.5 times its budget. X-Men Origins Wolverine was directed by Gavin and written by David Benioff and Skip Woods. Skip Woods is the distinguished writer of many great films including Hitman, Hitman Agent 47, and A Good Day to Die Hard.
He can never get out of his own way. Had a lot of problems.
So surely X-Men Origins Wolverine was a flaw-free film.
Hey, guess what?
This opening is clearly trying to tell the 6-issue comic book arc of Wolverine origin in 4 minutes, and it's completely pointless to this movie. It feels like a complete information overload. First we have Logan apparently sick for some unexplained reason.
You're always sick.
You were sick when you were my age.
But they never explain why. Is this somehow part of their mutation? What is its purpose in the story? Then Victor's father comes home drunk. Logan's father attempts to calm him and is murdered for his trouble. Logan sees his father dying and in a fit of rage unleashes his claws and kills Victor's father, only then to reveal that Victor's father was also Logan's father.
He wasn't your father, son.
Holy shit, that's a lot of stuff to take in. And the only bit that's actually important is that Logan and Victor are brothers. That's it. This big muddled opening scene just to show these two are brothers. Ugh. I know the goal here is to show his whole origin, but I feel like the movie would have been better served if it immediately started with these two going through the wars. It establishes these two as close, while it also shows how Victor is crueler while Logan is more honorable. Then you throw in a line where Stryker comments that they're brothers and voila, you no longer need this clunky intro scene.
Hey, guess what?
When you do a prequel, you have to be careful to follow the same timeline that was done in previous movies. And this movie makes some big mistakes, far worse than how Sabretooth looks. The first X-Men movie reveals that Wolverine has been wandering without his memory for almost 15 years.
Logan, it's been almost 15 years, hasn't it? Living from day to day, moving from place to place, with no memory of who or what you are.
And that film takes place in the not too distant future, whenever that is. But let's just say it takes place when it was released. So 2000. That means he lost his memories in 1985 at the earliest. Yet here he loses them at 3 Mile Island. It's strongly implied that the ending battle is the reason for the 3 Mile Island disaster. But that takes place in 1979. So how does this work? And here's another one. See how Wolverine's skull now has bullets bouncing off it? Whereas in X2, a bullet would knock him out for a couple minutes. It's probably a good idea to research your shit if you're going to make a prequel. You don't have to be comic book accurate, but you should be accurate to your own film universe.
Hey, guess what?
This movie actually has some really solid special effects when they aren't CGI. The Blob's fat suit looks great. But anytime an effect is computer generated or has a layer of computer graphics over it, it just looks terrible. Look how terrible Blob starts looking when they add a layer of CGI to it.
Whatever you do, don't mention his weight.
It's like that with all the CGI in this movie. These logs, this car hood, this fire escape, but the big standout is Wolverine's claws. They say they use the same techniques they've always used, but somehow they look so much worse here than they did in even the first X-Men movie.
Hey, guess what?
As someone who's not a Ryan Reynolds fan, I consider him a great choice for Wade Wilson in Deadpool. As an actor, he comes off as a guy who enjoys his own wit way more than anyone else does.
Thank you, sir. You look really nice today. It's the green. Brings out the seriousness in your eyes.
Oh my God, you ever shut up, pal?
No, not when I'm awake.
Which frankly makes him the perfect candidate for Deadpool. The character is crass and doesn't give a shit who he annoys.
Granted, it's probably not as intimidating as having a gun or bone claws or the fingernails of a bag lady.
He just cares about entertaining himself and the audience. The audience literally being the people reading the comic book or watching the movie. Deadpool makes Frank Underwood look like a noob at fourth wall breaking.
Did you think I'd forgotten you? Perhaps you hoped I had.
We get a brief scene with him before he's Deadpool, and it shows that Reynolds is a great fit for the character. Then, at the end of the movie, we get the reveal of the merc with the mouth, and they sewed his mouth shut. I mean, how do you write that? Was it their goal to piss off every Deadpool fan in existence? But don't worry, Fox knows what you really care about on Deadpool are the black diamonds around his eyes. Clearly, they have their priorities in order. Fortunately, they do have a mid-credit scene that reveals he didn't die at the end of the movie. Let's see what he says. Great, the merc with a mouth just called for silence, because hanging out with Deadpool should mirror the experience of hanging out in a library. Did these writers even bother to look up the wiki on Deadpool before writing him in this movie?
Hey, guess what?
It's very clear in this movie, they're less interested in fighting characters that work well in a story, and more interested in jamming as many characters into this movie as possible. Look at Bolt. Literally, his only contribution to the story is fixing the elevator when it's jammed.
Bradley, top floor, please.
Surely there's no way to write that without his character there. You could say his character's death shows us that Sabretooth is a villain, but the war montage already showed us that. Agent Zero is nothing more than a goon that Wolverine dispatches of with relative ease.
Having fun yet?
John Rath, Blob, and Gambit could easily be combined into one character. Think about it. John Rath tells Wolverine that he should talk to Blob for the information he needs.
But maybe Dukes knows. Him and Zero are real tight.
Fred Dukes? Where is he?
Blob says Wolverine should talk to Gambit for the information he needs.
And a prisoner escaped there once.
Who?
His name was Remy LeBeau.
Why not just have Wolverine go to John Rath and John could be like, here's the information you need. But then they can't pile on 2 more characters. The only major characters you need for this movie are Wolverine, Sabretooth, Stryker, Silver Fox, Deadpool, and either John Rath, Gambit, or Blob. That's all you need to tell this cobbled together mess they call a story. It's clear they have too many characters from the fact that they kill a ton of them off, some of them off screen even.
And the creepy black coat don't scare me.
Really? Worked on Dukes.
I guess the Blob here is different from the Blob in X-Men The Last Stand.
Lame.
For proof that they are just jamming characters in this movie without thinking of how they contribute to the story, check out this deleted scene that features a young Storm in the middle of the shot for no goddamn reason.
Hey, guess what?
So, when his claws are fully retracted, he can't bend his elbows? How's that in any way a good thing? And he has laser eyes? And Gambit can apparently hover cards and climb walls and jump huge distances? Really, the card thing is obnoxious when they could have had someone who's really good with cards just be a hand double for Gambit. Make it like Labyrinth when David Bowie fiddles with his balls.
Hey, guess what?
One could argue that this movie is somewhat comic book accurate, but I wouldn't. It feels like the screenwriters read a whole bunch of Wolverine comic books and just copy and pasted random scenes and elements and put together a story from that.
Because I'm the best there is at what I do.
What I do best isn't very nice.
And filled in the logic gaps with, I'm just messing with you. They didn't do anything to fix the gaps in logic. I could spend an entire video pointing out all the comic book arcs this movie forces into its story, but my issue is with the movie as a whole, and that's part of the problem. This doesn't feel like a whole story. It feels like fragments of stories fractured throughout. But I'll try to summarize as best I can. Wolverine works for Stryker. Wolverine quits. Sabretooth kills Wolverine's girlfriend. Stryker manipulates Wolverine to help him on an experiment. Wolverine rages and breaks out. Wolverine continues seeking Sabretooth. Wolverine discovers that Sabretooth and Stryker are working together, and that his girlfriend is still alive. But that doesn't matter because she dies for real soon after. Wolverine is shot by Stryker with a magic amnesia bullet. That's it. Anything I didn't mention there, including the Deadpool final battle, is just filler, which means pretty much this whole movie is one giant piece of filler. The story isn't helped when the driving force behind it is Wolverine's search for Victor, which feels really pointless since Victor is just always popping up wherever Wolverine is.
Ooh, shiny.
Watching the special features, it became clear a lot of thought and dedication went into this movie. Granted, this is true for every movie, even the bad ones. All the actors do really well in this movie overall. Well, in the case of Will.i.am, the best job they're capable of.
Shouldn't have done that, 'cause now I'm gonna kill you before Logan even gets a chance.
Unfortunately, even with this passion, they couldn't fix this muddled mess of a story. This movie is proof that Wolverine is a much more interesting character the less you know about him. For decades in the comic books, every time it felt like you were gaining some insight into Wolverine's past. They'd pull the rug out from under you and reveal that everything you thought you'd learned was just crap. It used to annoy me, but now that they've revealed all this information about his past, I actually find the character less interesting. They did eventually do a Wolverine origin comic book arc, which, in my opinion, wasn't anything special, but it was okay. If this movie had followed that, it would have been a lot better. But instead, this movie took the route of copying and pasting all the most famous elements of Wolverine's past and constructed a movie that feels like a string of stories flimsily stuck together, because that's all it really is. The closest movie in style to this one would be The Last Airbender, another movie that just takes pieces and scenes from the source material and copy and paste it into a movie without thinking about the movie standing on its own. From a superficial perspective, it seems like it should be accurate to the source material, but misses the spirit entirely. But now I kind of feel bad about equating these two movies. X-Men Origins Wolverine is terrible, but nowhere near the catastrophe of The Last Airbender. Hugh Jackman, as always, is in top form as Wolverine, but even with that going for it, this movie is a complete mess. In 2008, The Dark Knight and Iron Man were released, two of the best comic book movies ever made. Then a year later, we got X-Men Origins Wolverine, one of the worst comic book movies ever made. I give this movie a 2 out of 10.
Sucking up your IQ. Vacuuming the cortex. Feeding off your brain.
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.